Thanks, Mr. Raptor. It's been really nice. And thank you, Ford. Yianni and I have been driving this around all week. We're in New Zealand, it's freezing cold. It's early on Saturday morning now. And we've been out and about shooting a bunch of content for Ryco Filters. This is the outgoing Raptor. It's still current, kind of. The new one is here and it's about to be released, but very cool car, and thanks to Ford for letting us drive it. We haven't shot much of it yet because we haven't had time, but hopefully if the weather holds out, we're going to head out and shoot some content on it and take it on some dirt roads and bits and pieces. Plus we're also catching up with an old friend of mine who's done some pretty amazing stuff through his career, so that's going to be really cool because I want to just chat to him about what he's done to date, because he's still got plenty of cool stuff he wants to do, but also enjoy a bit more of the Raptor before we have to take it back tomorrow. So let's hit the road, get some shots. Good job, Yianni.
Thanks, Boxer.
Little GoPro cleaning guy. So, Alastair Ritchie, we've just been out driving around the hills and through the rain and sleet and all the wonderful New Zealand weather to get to here. Hampton Downs, we're at the, what is this place? Is it Mad Lab?
Yeah, Mad Lab's part of Mad Mike's sort of deal over the back. It's part of Quinn's empire, being Hampton Downs.
Nice. I was sort of here to talk about your stories and stuff like that, but for me this is kind of cool because I haven't seen this in the flesh, and I think my last experience catching up with Mike was with Jake Jones at his old workshop back in the day, where he was in there working on the car himself and had a bit of a sticker business going on and stuff like that. And now it's just epic and pretty cool too to see where he and Tony and the crew have all come, and obviously his son, who was just a little tacker before, is now out there skidding pretty much as good as Dad. So yeah, very cool. But yeah, I wanted to catch up with you while we're in New Zealand because we've known each other for 20 plus years now, I guess. You know, I met you through Auto Salon, and then when I went to Fast Fours magazine.
That's right.
You're a NZ guy, so talk to me about a bit of your history with your photography in New Zealand. What got you started into taking photos and photos of cars?
It was rally. I started off, just loved the symmetry, the artwork of things in motion. That was the key to it right from the outset. Just loved the way vehicles moved and just wanted to capture it. And you sort of learned to pan, and this is going back, long time, probably early 90s even.
Okay.
And just slowly developed, and somebody said, I need some photos taken of something, and I'm just going, how much? And they're going, I just said, I don't know, $50. Yep, no problem. Okay. Next time it was like $100. Yep, no problem. And it just carried on from there, I guess, as you develop your craft and your skill set.
What was the $50 gig? What did you do?
It was actually shooting for the Airline Pilots Association magazine, ALPA.
Okay.
So I was going out to the airport, going airside and photographing all these really cool scenes out in the areas nobody else can get to. So that was actually really, really fun.
And I guess, what was your first car, like rally-related gig?
I started shooting at the usual local racetracks, and then I knew people. I was involved with a little bit of the rally side of things, and so then I started to work a little bit on the rally thing. So sort of that scene a wee bit. It wasn't for any money at that time, and then it sort of led to meeting guys like Possum Bourne and worked with him and his sponsors for many years. Did a lot of trips to Australia with them, around New Zealand. Got involved with events like Rally New Zealand. I was the official photographer for Rally New Zealand for quite a number of years, sort of the mid-90s. That was a lot of fun. Then that led to other events. I was photographer for Rally Canberra, APRC at one stage, and travelled to Rally Australia quite a number of times out Perth. And that was awesome. You just got to know all the right people. But that was, it was a lot of work back then. You had to get, your full commitment to doing your job. You had to do your full reconnaissance before the event. So you would drive all the stages and worked out your locations, worked out your sun direction for the time of the day with the compass and what have you. You could just work out what spots are good. And if you liked it, how you're going to get into it, because you can't always get into the middle of these stages. So there's a lot of work.
You didn't have memory cards in Photoshop back then, so...
No, it was $1 a shot, I think, on the old transparency film back then, full Fuji Chrome Velvia and the like. It was, it was a nice time in that regards, but like anything, it's expensive. There's a lot of time commitment to do those things, and the clients these days just don't want to pay that sort of money to get that good content.
Well, I guess, on the events and stuff like that, I mean, obviously you mentioned Possum Bourne, and, sadly he passed away, and you were there when that all happened, unfortunately, from what I remember. But what are some of the amazing moments that you remember with Possum and that relate to some of the photos that I might get you to send me?
Possum's a character. Some of the things he got up to you probably wouldn't want to mention. He was a great character, a real larrikin. Gift of the gab. He's just such a tremendous person, and his ability to garner what he needed from various people within the scene was one of his best traits. Everybody gravitated towards the character, and if somebody needed a hand with something, it all worked for him, that's for sure, and it was just his personality and character that made it all happen. But I remember jumping in Rally of Canberra one day, pre-event testing and so on. He said we were all leaving the hotel, and he goes, "Oh, come with me," and we just jump into this WRC car, which is his favourite car, and we go tooling around the streets of Canberra, and we pull in and go and have a coffee in a cafe in this WRC car, just parked like everybody else. And I thought that was a really crazy thing to do back in the day. And he was complaining about how little horsepower it had. But the whole experience with him, spending that time was magic. It's,
and I guess it's not just about the cars and the motorsport, is it? It's a lot about the people too, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. 100%. And I was official photographer for Rally, the Race to the Sky, which is the hill climb event that was modelled off Pikes Peak, which started in '98 and ran 10 years, which is a pretty awesome commitment from the promoter and so on, and the sponsors, which is really, really good. And after that very first event, which was held in, I think it was Easter, a couple of months later was Pikes Peak in '98, so they all announced that they were all going to go along as a crew and go and check out Pikes Peak, which was the sort of sister event now that was being marketed. And so it was good that I managed to jump on board that trip as well, and I basically attended that event 19 years straight, every year afterwards. So it just leads to other things.
Well, I mean, I got to go there with you I think it was circumstantial too. I was going to America on a holiday while I was at Fast Food. Actually, is that audio right? Wind? No.
It's rain.
New Zealand.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting on the track.
Yeah. 3 hours to go. So, I mean, and I think it's 2003. I was going to America, and I think I was talking to you while I was at Fast Forward just about something magazine related. And the conversation came up that I was going to America, and you said, what dates? and it just so happened that it aligned. So yeah, I went to Pikes Peak with you, and I mean, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have got to go to where I got to go and meet some of the cool people. And yeah, for a seasoned campaigner like you that had been going there, it was pretty cool. But I mean, a lot of what I wanted to talk to you about today was some of the people, like, so obviously you mentioned Possum Bourne. Tell me about your relationship with Rod Millen and Reese Millen.
Well, Rod and Reese as a family, when I first again went to Pikes Peak, 98, first time there, Rod liked what I did, and he got me the gig for Toyota for his Pikes Peak campaign, which is the first year. They just retired the Toyota Celica, as they call it in America, and we're unveiling the new Tacoma, which is the car he just ran at Pikes Peak 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, nice.
So that was a 3-year program. So it was good to be on the card for that as a first time, and it was just one of these, amazing. The first time on this mountain and picking out a few spots, and I think some of the first, 10 or 15 photos I ever took on Pikes Peak are probably some of my favourites. Just the lighting on that particular morning. You're at 13,000 feet at 5:20 in the morning, just as the sun's just starting to come up. And just enough light, and they start their practice runs. So you got this amazing environment that you just won't get anywhere else in this world.
Yeah, and I think for me too, I mean, I've only been there once, and I really wish I'd made it this year. But it's one of those places where you go and you sort of, people ask you what it's like, and you just sort of say, well, I can't really explain it unless you go there yourself. Yep. It's same for me with like the Isle of Man and stuff like that. It's like you got to experience it for yourself to really.
Because the practices are done so early throughout the week, are so early in the morning, because the actual Pikes Peak Highway is open to the public from pretty much 9 a.m. 364 days a year. So that means you effectively got only from first light till 9 a.m. to practice throughout the week. So it's basically 3 a.m. starts in a row, and you're at altitude. So it is a very tough climate to get used to, but you acclimatise pretty quick.
Yeah, 100%.
And if you're smart, you don't walk uphill anywhere.
Yeah.
You try to always walk downhill.
I did try that myself, and it wasn't really ideal. But I mean, talking about Reese and Rod and stuff like that, I mean, tell me about some of your more memorable photos. I mean, you got your phone there, and there's a pretty cool photo. And I mean, what are some of the shots you've taken, some of the epic cars you've shot?
It's, when you've been shooting for over 25 years, it's quite a difficult question, to be honest.
How much footage have we got in this camera?
So yeah, it's one of these situations where you've had so many experiences. It's very difficult to track them down. One was obviously the PPRE Mazda RX4.
Oh yep.
Which had the world's first 6-rotor. Now it was an exclusive deal I had with the boys at the time, which is really cool, and went into a lot of magazines and a lot of places around the world, that feature. But the thing that stuck with me about that particular feature was the sound of that car. It was just unbelievable. It's just an assault on your ears in a good way. It's the angriest sound I've ever heard in a car. It's probably my favourite sound ever in that sense. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess, like to ask you that question is probably a crazy question too, because the amount of cars you've shot, and I mean, just looking back when I went to Pikes Peak with you, we did that shoot with the LG electric car that Jerry Unser was driving, which was super cool. Like back then, 2003, so there was a bit of electric stuff being done, but talking to those guys, it was really cool. But we shot that in Garden of the Gods, Manitou Springs, yeah.
Right. Yep.
Just a really cool spot to shoot a car. And then that year you were working with Mike Ryan. So I mean, Mike Ryan, like.
Yeah, he's
I met him because of you, and that's cool. And I tell people that story. It's like
incredible individual, old Mike. He's such a great bloke, but he's a Hollywood stuntman. He's been doing that for a long time. He specialises in trucks and bus stunts and so on. He's done a lot of work in the Terminator movies. You've seen buses sliding on their side and trucks going off bridges into aqueducts. You know, he's done all these different types of stunts, as well as races a big rig at Pikes Peak, and has been doing so for, you know, probably the best part of 20 years.
And I remember that truck coming up the hill, because I was taking photos there. I had my little film camera there, and just seeing this rig coming up the hill, the big turbo diesel sound coming out of it, and he's done a lot of really cool things with that over the years. So. And like you said, like I remember we had dinner with him, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, oh, so what movies have you been? And he's like, you remember that scene in Terminator 2 where the truck? And I was like, oh, you know, this is cool. This is like proper Hollywood stuff. Yeah, but I mean, probably like looking at other cars and stuff like that. I mean, you've shot so many feature cars for magazines, and I wouldn't say they're generic cars, because every car is really cool and stuff like that, but what are some of the more crazy rememberable things, like, race cars, because you've done World Time Attack, all that sort of stuff as well, but what are some of the really epic cars that were your favourites?
Yeah, it's hard to bring them. There's been so many. It's more to do with not just the car, but the experience involved in shooting. You know, I remember working this job for Street Machine magazine, and this 51 Ford shoebox, which is a pretty ugly little duckling of an era of car, and these guys up in Seattle, Wicked Fabrications, had put together this amazing version of that, their take on it, and it was over $1 million US spent on it. I think it had a Cadillac engine in it, and a lot of stainless work and rivets and aeronautical type themed setups, lots of leather straps holding the tank, and just all looks like an aircraft tank inside. And yeah, it's just a work of art, amazing car. And I flew into Seattle, and there we have it. And we turn up at their shop, beautiful car. I look outside, and it's like Auckland, really.
Yeah.
Rain.
Yeah.
I'm just going, and the owner doesn't want to get this car wet. I'm just going, what are we going to do? Let's, anybody with a hangar or something, maybe get to an airport and find a spot inside. Yeah, one of my customers has a few planes. So there we have it. We got access to this hangar, and there's I think there's about 7 odd aircraft in this hangar, and the owner just rang the guy in charge and said, move all the aircraft outside, and they had one big post-World War II plane. It's an A31 or something, I can't remember what it's called. And he pulls that out. Where do you want it? And it was a really cool looking place. So that was our background for that shot. But so you're lying on an active taxiway. That's where they make all the 737s, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
So you're dodging those coming in up and down on the runways and off the taxiways while you're running out there lying on your belly trying to do the shoot. But that was one of those unusual days.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I mean, just the fact that you said you went to Seattle to shoot it is awesome as well. I mean, that's the good thing about some of this experiences, going places. I guess, I mean, rally and stuff like that. One thing that sticks with me, and looking at some of your photos, is that, like, I know a lot of motorsport photographers, and everyone's amazing, but you always get that sort of nice panning shots and stuff like that. But one thing you've always done a bit different, I think, is like just looking at the shot from the what's in the shot point of view. I remember seeing a shot where there's a rally car going through the shot, and there's a girl sitting there, and it was just a static shot. There's no movement in the camera, but everything was happening in the shot.
I mean, sometimes again, a lot of it's luck so far as we don't have budgets to control everything, so you can't just dream the shot up, draw it up like you do on the movies. You basically turn up to this environment, location, and you have to make something work with that. Whether there's somebody there, as like that shot you're talking about, which is Rally New Zealand years ago, Whangaa Coast, Richard Burns. We just landed in a helicopter, and there's a girl sitting there on the grassy knoll reading a book on a Sunday morning, and she didn't know this rally was on. And I said, just don't get up, there's some cars coming through soon. And so we got the New Zealand with the rally, you always want to have the sea in the background, had an old New Zealand picket fence, which is pretty rough, and just the whole scene worked. And that was shot back in transparency film back in the 90s sometime. But it's good when you can pull those little elements together and you just don't know what you're going to find around every corner. And that's the cool thing about shooting. Every day is different, and you got to make the most with whatever you've got, with whatever time and resources are available.
Well, I mean, and saying that, now flip that around. I mean, give me an example of a shoot that you've done where you have had like good budget and stuff like that, because I'm sure there's been a few of them.
Yeah, it's many of them. You're really still controlled by weather and other elements, so you never have that total control. So you just have to roll with, and I guess that's comes with that experience.
Well, what's been the most glamorous shoot you've done then, like that you can think of where it was a real Gucci shoot and you've had everything sort of work out for you just nicely?
These are the luck elements.
Yep.
And having people around. I remember turning up to shoot this amazing custom motorcycle in Dunedin, in the South Island, New Zealand. It was absolutely atrocious weather, which is not unusual down there, unfortunately. Vertical rain, and I'm just walked into this powder beating shop where they built this motorcycle, and it's a work of art. Where are we going to shoot this? What are we going to do? And it was a Metallica themed bike after the band, and we thought, well, let's start with this metal theme. And so we ended up, somebody knew somebody who had a shipyard, a shipbuilding business, and so we went down there and they had this big, massive plasma cutting table, and they'd been cutting up these pieces of artwork out of this sheet steel. And I saw a piece on top of a stack, and I said, can we use that as a background? This is like an 8 metre by 5 metre piece of 50mm plate steel.
Yeah, wow.
With plasma cut patterns in it. So the big gantry comes over, the chains come down, and they pick it up and drop it on the floor. Where do you want it? And so we ended up, we had people there running around with grinders in the background, and then more people turned up, and we had some accelerant on the ground and set up another little grid. It was just one of these things where everybody just works together to get the best result possible.
Yeah.
That's the fun elements of it. You just start the day, you just don't know where you're going to end up at the end of it, and that's what I really enjoy about it. The machines are sort of incidental, coincidental with regards to what you end up shooting.
And I mean, I guess, grand scheme of things, like for me, you're probably the same. I kind of feel like I've still got a lot of career ahead of me because there's so many things I still want to do. I mean, what are the things you'd still love to do that you haven't already done?
I'd like to do land speed over in the US there. Go to one of the Speed Week events.
Yep.
That's something I haven't done. I've done Goodwood, I've done Baja 1000. Probably do a little bit more in Europe would be quite neat. There's some amazing things to be done over there, but down in New Zealand, we're a long way away.
Same as us though, it's like...
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and as far as like, like taking photos for you, I mean, what do you look for? I mean, we were at PPRE and they said that you were quite particular when they were shooting the RX4. I mean, what is it about a photo for you that just makes things right? Is it the time taken, or is it...
To me, a car is a car. It's an object with 4 wheels or 2 wheels in this motorcycle. They're all different colours and shapes, and you take that element out of it. You're always looking for the background. The environment is the key to any feature, so I work really hard in terms of finding those right backgrounds. We don't shoot on grass. I don't have power poles. I don't have fences and houses, buildings type stuff that's just, it never wants to look like it was just parked on the side of the street and shot. there's a lot of time and effort. Sometimes I'll be driving around for 3 or 4 hours plus, plenty of kilometres trying to find these locations, and you get pretty lucky sometimes. I remember finding where was it? Just north of Northern California, down near Bakersfield. Came across doing a scope for a shoot for the Fairway 55 Chev. Found this amazing tank farm, an old oil tank farm, and the gates were open, the place was derelict. And yeah, awesome backgrounds, great location. So you just got to go out there and find what you're looking for, and it's very difficult to explain to anybody what you're looking for. As many people say, I've got these backgrounds in mind, and which seldom ever work out, but it's good when people are that excited, it's going to be good, because those type of people are really enthused about the process, and that makes it a lot easier.
And I mean, coming back to the magazine days, like you've shot so many features and so forth, and also syndicated a lot of magazine features around the world. And what would be some of because you shot a few covers as well, what would be some of your memorable covers?
I remember, the covers are an interesting thing, is because many magazines, and for good reason, will only put the vehicle from their own country on the cover. They don't want, a lot of magazines don't want the foreign stuff for their local client base. And there's many magazines like that. So it's very seldom you get a car from another country on the cover of a magazine. It's rare, and only certain magazines will do that. We've done Rodder's Journal like that with one of the shoots we've done in New Zealand. We did one for Super Street once. Yep. We shot at Mount Ruapehu, which you might have seen today on your ride, drive north. So yeah, it's not often.
Oh, a question for me, and this is a little bit of a sad one, because obviously we touched on the Possum Bourne thing before, which is a sad one for you as well, because obviously knowing him, and for the people, and I'll look at the camera and saying this because that one's turned off. Alistair was there when Possum passed away, unfortunately, but another sad moment for you, or probably an eye-opener, was shooting Alec Bell's RX2.
Yes, that was one of those, sad days at the office, and they do happen from time to time. And in that particular instance, this gentleman had been building this car for probably, I think, the best part of 7 years, perhaps. So it's one of those, long time goals, and he'd built this absolutely beautiful RX2 drag car. It had a carbon fibre front clip, and I think it had a triple turbo.
Two-rotor, yeah. That was a beautiful car, yeah.
He'd finally finished, we lined it up, and we took it into the studio, had a girl, did the full shoot, and that came out really, really well, and they're all happy. And I said, well, we need to get some motion shots of this in its environment, so we had arranged to do a couple of burnouts and the like at Mary drag strip. And on that particular morning, he had never actually run the car up as yet, it was that fresh, and he took the front clip off, did a run up and down the strip, and the Lenco was all working fine. He was amazed at the power. He said he was really fizzing over that. So he did one small burnout, not enough wheel speed and smoke, so he was happy. So a bit more speed, and obviously on that one, when he's doing his little burnout, something flew up in the air, and we weren't sure what it was. And then he finished his burnout and the car cut out. And he just sat there looking at the dials inside, and we're sitting there looking down the strip, and you could see a heat wave coming off the car in the wind. And we thought, fire. And he took quite a number of seconds before he felt the heat and realised that there was a fire. And unfortunately, the car was a methanol-powered car, so you can't see the flames. Yeah. And he pushed the door open, and when he pushed the door open, the flames caught his arm, which can't have been good. So he rolled out, and one of his crew had a bucket of water right there and then, which helped. But yeah, unfortunately, the car more or less burned to the ground. At the time, I think I don't know how many extinguishers they threw into it to get it out, but the shell still survived, and motor and box and the main components, anything perishable, was gone. But I don't think he ever managed to get it back on the road. I don't know what happened to it after that time, but it was a very sad situation. But
I mean, we ran back in the time, I think there was a small feature about the car and shot of the fire that you'd got.
Yeah, it's but again, it's tough. We did another. It's always, every so often you do come across, you know, especially event photography. Or I went to a land speed record attempt in '96. The gentleman called Owen Evans was running the New Zealand land speed record out at Reparoa, long piece of flat road, and it's just right out in the countryside. So it's just forest on one side and paddocks on the other. Nothing, no salt lakes or anything fancy in New Zealand. So he unfortunately had from what we understand, a tyre delaminated maybe from a stone or something, we're not sure. And he came off the road at probably close to 360 odd K from the stories. And that was like an aircraft crash. It was horrendous, and I managed to obviously get a few photographs in, which was a bit sad. And the motor landed about 20 feet from me and still had flames belching out of it. It's it's one of these remarkable scenarios that happened right in front of his crew and family and everything. So it was a tough one. But it's like anything, you go to cover events like that, and you, as a reporter, you kind of record what the events are for the day, and it's recording those events is very important as well. And it's the same thing that happened at lucky Owen Evans survived that, and he's still having a great time in life, which is really cool. And, but then going forward, we had with the possum incident, I ended up taking photographs of the scene, not of possum himself, but of the scene, and that was ended up, when you've been around long enough, it's important to record the scene and what goes on and some of the facts, and because somebody always wants to know, if not the driver. In this case, the police wanted that detail, because all the skid marks and the like were covered up by all the emergency vehicles and other vehicles that attended that. So a lot of the forensic evidence that they were going to need to do their forensics wasn't there. So they actually came to me with regards to the images. Again, that's the reason you shoot that stuff. It's not, I'm not the guy that's going to go run off down to the paper and try and sell them for $200 or whatever the papers pay. It's just, that's not worth it to me. But it's unfortunate, but you're there to record events, and it's part of your role in history, I suppose.
Well, and I mean, I guess the positive side is that, looking at his old workshop the other day, there's so many great memories of him and all the awesome stuff he did. So it's like any images you see of him is a big smiling face, or him in a car flat out sideways and doing crazy stuff. So he's not remembered for the crash, he's remembered for being Possum Born, the amazing rally driver and fun guy,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that wasn't his fault at all in that situation either. The forensics pointed it out clearly as to what had happened, but anyway, that's another story.
You can't change history, but I guess, and I mean, we could talk for days about all this stuff, but one question I guess would be a cool one would be, and times have changed so much now, like iPhone 13s that take beautiful, amazing photos and stuff like that now, but if somebody genuinely was aspiring to be a photographer in similar field of what you're doing, what would your Alastair's amazing bit of advice be?
Get a job. If you want a career in this, you're not going to make any money. So really, it's so flooded with content these days. You have to be extraordinary to be able to make a living doing this. in this current climate these days. You know, you've got the likes of Larry Chen, and he's one of those that has risen to the top. And he's done it in his own personal style and his own character and charisma, and it's not just the photography that he's becoming renowned for.
Yeah.
You know, he's a personality and a character now that people follow and enjoy what he does. So he's kind of broken that mold a little bit, which is really, really cool. And he's one that's fallen in love with Pikes Peak also.
Yeah.
But it's interesting seeing a lot of the shots that he's taken and some of his staff have taken, which he's working with currently, to see those similar shots I've taken 10, 15 plus years ago from similar angles. But you know, so it's just interesting to see new people into that realm and see what they see, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And everybody has, somebody's always got a really cool take on the same thing, and that's the X factor that most people don't have.
Yeah.
That will bring them above everybody else. So if you look at the social feeds, they're full of people in car park, hard park type meets, just shooting cars, and they're excited and fizzing about that, which is really cool to see that enthusiasm. But nobody's ever going to make any money doing that specifically. It's a very challenging field to be in if you want to make a career from it. Yeah.
And I guess looking back, like, I consider myself to be incredibly lucky because, you know, as a apprentice mechanic and then working as a mechanic, I had a bit of a passion for photos and stuff like that. I got my first camera when I was 18 and then went out and shooting rolls of film and bits and pieces, and then luckily got some work taking photos and working in magazines. And then, yeah, the game's changed a bit now, but the thing that I look back at is that I actually really enjoyed it and I like taking photos and I'd like finding different angles and stuff like that. And that's why I went out and bought another SLR, because whilst there's not a lot of photography work, so to speak, paying the bills these days, I actually just genuinely like taking a photo, and it's like
It's a passion.
It's a passion and a hobby now, and I've sort of found this like for taking black and white photos lately and stuff like that. So, you know, buying a nice camera for me has been like almost a present to myself, not a work tool. Instead. And saying that, you know, we'll probably wrap this up now because, I mean, we are here at Hampton Downs and there is, I think, a couple of hours of the Lemons 6 hour still going, so we might head out and have a look and knock off a couple of shots. I might even let you have a touch of my camera if you want. But no, it's been awesome
lucky
catching up with you, and yeah, awesome. I can't wait to see more of what you've done, and actually, and also Instagram or social media. I mean, have you got some photos up there that people can look at?
Yeah, it's a little bit of on Instagram. But yeah, it's one of these things you can absorb and spend a huge amount of time in that realm, and as you get a little bit older, you find better things to do, like go fishing.
Yeah, or cooking a steak. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's each to their own, and you know, those people that are starting out with their own journey, it's just like yourself. You have that passion, and if you enjoy it, it's great.
Yeah. If you're only doing it for the money, then you're doing the wrong thing. Yeah.
And I think so. Very few people can seem to make it, and it's having that eye and ability to utilise the tools you've got and the resources you have available. With you've got lighting equipment as well as good photography tools, and then find a style that and a look and a feel that is different from everyone else, and it's very, very difficult. In this day and age, as you say, everybody's got an iPhone and a camera, so it becomes a very much a saturated market, I suppose you could say.
And I guess, you know, lastly, just adding to that too, like, it's just like you've said, having the eye for it is finding a nice shot, and if you find the shot interesting, hopefully other people will. But then, like, because these cameras are so technical, don't stress about the technical side. You'll probably get it all wrong to start off with, but the good thing is that there's so much information on the internet now. You can sit down and watch 100 hours of YouTube about camera setups, but not about how you want to take a photo of that coffee cup there. You know, it's like, yeah.
So once you've understood the tool and your aperture, basically, which is your depth of field, and your lens length and how that works together, you can effectively look at any object and decide how you want to, that to look in your view. So you sort of transpose your knowledge base and creativity to the subject, and then decide how you want the end look.
Yeah.
And that's where it's so cool, because we'll both do the same subject and it'll come out quite different.
Yeah,
Shots will be
100%.
different. And that's the cool thing about it. We're all individuals, and there's no right or wrong. It's always subjective.
So what do you reckon, F4?
I'd go faster than that.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, let's go and have a look at some cars.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark.
All right, we're all done here. Awesome day yesterday catching up with Alastair Ritchie. He is a very cool, very talented photographer. Great 4 days before that, going to some really cool workshops in New Zealand. So we're going to be a bit sad going home, but we've got to get this Raptor back and get to the airport. So we'll see you in the next one.